Again, House Bill 581, the Homestead Property Exemption. The purpose of it was to limit the annual increase in taxable value by a rate of inflation, and that rate is determined by the Department of Revenue Commissioner. The initial base year for existing homesteads would be 2024. Any future homesteads would be set at the year that those were applied for. The sale of a home would reset the base to the fair market value at the time of the sale. The bill does provide an option for counties, cities, and school systems to opt out, but that has to be done by March 1st. If you don't opt out, you cannot opt out at a later time. But if you opt out now, you can effectively opt back in the future. The consequences, there are pros and cons in here. There is an inherent gap that would be created between the actual fair market value of a home and the capped value. And that gap would increase over time, which means that the millage that would have to be raised in order to make up that difference in revenue would increase over time. Now, homestead property owners would have some stability in the amount of the increase annually because they would know what the maximum that could increase. That benefit to the homestead property owners would increase over time as that gap between the fair market value and the cap value increased. So the longer they own that property, the more benefit that they would receive. Again, though, the taxes on other properties such as rentals, businesses, farms, etc., would increase to make up for that benefit to the homestead property owners, and that could result in increases in cost of goods and services. There would be some inequities created based on long-term ownership versus newer ownership. Someone who purchased a property in a future year would be paying at a higher value for a similar property that was purchased prior to 2024. Because of this, it may disincentivize the sale of homestead properties so that people don't lose that benefit. And because of the increase in taxes on other properties, it may disincentivize other businesses relocating to Lowndes County. Again, this is just a demonstration. This is in no way actually projecting the future, but showing the difference in the fair market value and the rate of growth versus the capped value, and that is a projected capped value. That gap between the two increases over time, and with that, the millage rate that has to be set to make up the difference in the revenue would increase over time as well. On the benefit to homestead property owners, again, because of that gap and the way that gap works, the benefit in the very beginning is very small, but it increases over time the longer that you own that piece of property. There were some timelines and requirements for the opt-out procedure. Again, the county has to opt out before March 1st. So during January, there was a vote and the posting of the intent to opt out, as well as a press release and the post on the website. During February, we're holding the 3 public hearings in accordance with the requirements for times and advertising, and tomorrow night is the vote on a resolution to opt out, and that has to be filed with the Secretary of State's office prior to Saturday. Again, both local school systems have published their intent to opt out. As Ms. Dukes alluded to earlier, House Bill 581 also introduced the FLOST, which is the additional sales tax of up to 1% to help offset the exemption. But in order to qualify for a FLOST, it would have required all cities and the county to opt in. It would have required an agreement between the city of Valdosta and Lowndes County on how to split the funds, and it would have to be put on a referendum, which would have to be renewed in 5 years. Also, just some additional points related to authority funding and as those millage rates are set. This is a his chart showing the millage history for Lowndes County. The dark bar with the numbers on it is the tax that actually comes to Lowndes County. There are, from 2005 to 2024, there are only 2 years that the millage rate actually went up for the county. It has stayed the same or been reduced every year since, and it is significantly less than what it was in 2005. As Ms. Dukes mentioned earlier, the county school board and the county have been working together to determine a way to help those who are 65 and over in our community with their property taxes. Currently, the exemption for seniors in Lowndes County is $10,000. There is a homestead exemption for seniors provided for in state statute, and what you receive in Lowndes County is actually more beneficial than that. But the intent is for the the county and the school system to jointly present a plan for homestead exemption changes at the same time. The new exemption, again, would have to be approved on a referendum, and while the amount has not yet been determined, there's a slide here that shows what the possible impacts of that are on a $200,000 home. Currently, with the $10,000 exemption, the county tax on that, just the county portion, is about $370. For every additional $10,000 of the senior exemption, that would save about $50 on that $200,000 home. The school board has a millage rate that is almost 3 times the amount of the county millage rate, so it would save about 3 times that amount. Just some final points. House Bill 581 is a complicated issue, and there are some inherent issues that are written into the statute. The state legislature has recognized that, and there have been several bills that have been dropped trying to fix some of the problems with it. But right now, there is one small window to opt out, or you're locked in forever. Opting in would create some inequities that cannot be corrected once those values are locked in. But opting in does provide benefits to the homestead property owners that will become more meaningful the longer they own the property. Again, opting out does maintain local control, giving the county and the cities and school boards the ability to make impactful changes.
Any questions for Ms. Dukes or Ms. Black?
Yes, sir. So I want to use my words carefully, but I understood after watching the City of Valdosta's meeting the other night that they stayed in with the assumption that they were going to impose a floss to make up the revenue that's going to be lost, if you want to call it that, from this. But in all of our slides, it says that if one group opts out, then there is no option for a floss.
Correct. That is our legal understanding of the way that the legislation is currently being written. I know that there's at least one draft that's in the General Assembly that it does adjust some changes. I'm not sure if that's an address or a change that's been addressed with that proposed legislation.
Okay.
Keeping in mind also that the City of Lake Park has published their intent to opt out as well. So if you all choose to stay in, as well as the City of Valdosta, if Lake Park opts out, then there's no floss.
It's very concerning because that revenue's got to be made up somewhere, and I'm not sure. I mean, I'm usually in favor of a 1-cent tax, typically, because for all the reasons that we've mentioned and talked about for a number of years, but I also feel like 9% is.
Yeah, I think that, we've talked about the numbers, and Ms. Black's presentation reflected some numbers, and we've had those conversations with the county school board. Now, I want that to be real clear, just the county school board, that we want to look at the possibility of something, and a combination of doubling, as Mr. Duke said earlier, doubling the homestead exemption for anyone that is 65 and less that has homestead exemption. That would take you from $6,000 up to $12,000 homestead home year exemption. And keep in mind, that comes off of you're only taxed at 40% of the value to start with. So then that comes off of that value. And then look at the standpoint of, from the schools side of it, and us, can we do a 40 to 50,000 for homeowners that are 65 and older, plus to get a little bit of a combination there, we can look at doing the 50 maybe for those that's 75 and older, or 70 and over, I'm sorry, at 75 is probably taking a little bit too far, but at 70 you get 50,000, at 65 you get 40,000.
Which is significant.
Which is very significant.
And also
It's a huge
immediate,
savings.
where 581 takes time for you to build that benefit over time. This is something immediate. And our conversation after the hearing this morning is to talk to the county attorney on what our ballot options would be. If you all want to move forward with that, the General Assembly is on standby as far as our delegation goes, and then for us to look at what our options would be timeline-wise.
We've had those conversations with the delegation, and they're willing to take the resolution and present it and then get it back so that it can be on the ballot. Hopefully, we're looking at what the options are to try to get it out there as soon as we can so that it can be approved by the voters so that it can take effect as soon as possible. So if we did it in March, for example, we're able to do that. I don't know, but if we can get it on there as early as March, then that would give us time that by the time that the bills and all go out, it would be reflected on this year's or last year or next year's taxes.
One option, if it could be approved in the General Assembly during this session,
Right.
then one option is for it to then be on the ballot in November. And if so, it could be effective for 2026 taxes. The alternative is for it to be on a ballot in 2026, for example, in May, and then become effective for 2027 taxes.
So we couldn't, so for clarification, you don't think that we could actually get something on the ballot if they got it, and they have to get it before March the 6th, because that's crossover day, so they'd have to have something by then so that they could act on it here in this session. Then if we could find a place on the Board of Elections where we could have the ballot sooner than November, that's not going to change anything until 26 taxes.
Correct.
Okay, so
No
clarify.
matter, 2025 taxes are based on the law in effect as of January 1.
As of January.
They cannot be changed retroactively.
Okay.
So is it safe to say though, without putting you on the spot, with your conversations with the chair, with the county school system, kind of the direction that things are going, opting out is a better option to save the property tax owners.
Absolutely.
Taxpayers will be significantly more than what staying.
If you all move forward with the exemptions, the additional exemptions as proposed, yes.
And the reason opting out creates that is because our digest is kind of messed up.
So our residential digest is not current, so if you all stay in, you're gonna be locking in something that is inaccurate into perpetuity until something changes, which is where we believe that there could be uniformity issue challenged long-term with that because of that inaccuracy. But I think the biggest difference that the citizens would see financially is that this will be immediate. This will be, as the county attorney said, on the next tax bill that is allowed as of January 1. So this would be something that the benefit would not build over time as the cap as far as 581 goes. This would be an immediate. And some of the preliminary numbers that Stephanie and I have worked on with the school board over the last week, on a $200,000 home, For the 65 and older exemption, if the school board moves forward with 40,000 at 65 and the county moves forward with the 40,000 at 65, that savings is around $550 for someone in the unincorporated area that is 65 and over. That is an immediate $550 for that.
Because the school tax is about 60% of your tax value.
That's right.
So having them on board is critical for any real tax savings.
That's right. That's why whenever the commission the last 2 years especially has been so aggressive in rolling back the county's millage rate, the citizens have not seen the benefit of that on their total as far as their tax bill goes, because not every local government or school system in the county has been able to do that. And for the school system's credit, they've had some other legislation that prevented them from being able to do that. The chairman will tell you, as well as myself in the conversations, they've been working with the General Assembly for about 3 years, and they were told that there was some accommodation coming legally, and then what came out was House Bill 581, and it wasn't anywhere near what the school system had been asking for. So whenever we started these conversations as well, it was kind of a natural partnership for us to get together and say, okay, you know, the county's rolling back, you guys can't, you're addressing this through the legislation, but how do we partner so that, again, what we put in is meaningful and significant and immediate? And that's what these additional exemptions that we had prepared for you all to consider will do.
The good thing really about 581, what I see that has come out of it is that sure you could opt in and just lock in those values at that point, but it's going to take, in a lot of cases, it's going to take citizens 5, 6, 7 years before they really would see any kind of savings, as was reflected in the presentation. And as Ms. Dukes is saying, that this is immediate. But the thing that 581 really has done is that it's been the vehicle that has allowed this commission and the school board, for the first time that I'm aware of, to actually sit down and say, how can we work together to come up with a formula that is going to be best for the citizens of Lowndes County? And we're talking about, certainly, their millage is higher than what ours is. Now, in all fairness, their millage is only affected in the unincorporated area only.
Well, also, apologies, but in Hayhire, Lake Park, Dasher, that's the Lowndes School District.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So they basically got a smaller digest, number one, and then I learned that 5 mil of their bill automatically goes to Atlanta, that they don't get to benefit. Now, they get money back, but I mean, that's part of that process. But we could do the savings as ourselves, just as the county, but as you see, because of we're already so low on our millage, and what we get is that number is going to be much smaller than it would be by getting the school system as well to acknowledge this and us come together to get a much bigger savings across the board for the citizens. That's what 581 to me has really been. It's been that vehicle that has said, y'all need to sit down and talk about this to see if we can really get a significant savings for the citizens in our community. So,
Well, and I commend you and Ms. Dukes, council, and Senator Wiltshire, and everybody, on not just taking this and letting them cram it down our throat, so to speak, and doing what's best for our citizens. Because again, all I have to hear is that opting out gives our citizens a bigger tax break on their property taxes than staying in, and then all the other, I mean, 581 is not fair for somebody like me that's 55 years old, that quite literally could be having a tax bill that's twice as much as my next door neighbor, same age, same situation. That's just not right in my eyes. So anyway, I said all that to say thanks to my colleagues and to y'all for the leadership, and I think we've done a good job of really working.
well, that's where we felt like that it was significant and that everybody shared in the savings, rather than just go all the way to one age group, if we want to call it that. Look at everybody that's got a homestead exemption, and if we can double your homestead exemption for anyone that's 65 and less, go 40 on those that are 65 and older, and then 70, we could look at 50. And we're looking at all those combinations right now.
So back to what Ms. Duke said a second ago, though, on a $200,000 house, that's what, about a $1,200 tax bill with everything all in, $1,500 something?
It's about a $2,000 $2,000 tax bill
Okay,
in the unincorporated area.
but you're saying this will give a roughly close to $600 in relief?
Around 550.
$550?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thanks also because we've had a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks, and I feel unequivocally clear on the direction that we're going. And I think that we actually spend enough time to get it out to the public to really understand.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people voted for it, but they didn't know what came with it.
I agree.
And that's just the truth.
I'll raise my hand and say I didn't fully understand it.
When will we see this to vote on for 50%?
Tomorrow evening, if you all would like to amend the agenda, then the attorney's office has worked just as hard, and I appreciate all the credit that you all have given us, but Stephanie and Walter have really carried a large share of the load there and working on that, and Will as well with his work that he does with the assessor's office, and Lisa Bryant, because she has been on standby for us the last couple of weeks too. So with all of that being said, the attorney's office has everything prepared for you all tomorrow night. Being that crossover day is March the 6th, we need to get this to Atlanta as quickly as possible. So John LaHood is very excited about this. He has graciously agreed to carry the legislation for us. So we would like to be able to transmit to him no later than tomorrow evening if that's something that you all would like to support.
I just want to say thank you. As a new commissioner, only 3 meetings in, this is a big thing to discuss, and the staff and the professionalism has had all the information we need, along, like you said, with the tax commissioner, the head appraiser, finance people from school systems and county government, and the other commissioners. So it's been a lot, but a good process to go through to learn about this. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to ask, is there any